everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really important that you choose the right MBA for you, so we're really excited that you're here with us. And today we're going to focus on the application process. So my name is Jules Barton. I did the full-time MBA at Cranfield 2013 to 2014. I'm also the Vice President of Alumni for the School of Management. I'm going to run through some introductions, the agenda, and a bit of housekeeping before we kick off. Team, as I introduce you, please could you give a wave? So we're really excited that we have Helen Knight here with us today. Helen is the MBA Admissions Manager, so a very important person for you to get to know. And Helen is going to talk us through the application process. We're then going to go into our Q&A session, and we're joined by Sarah Hatcher, who is the MBA Admissions Director. Sarah is also a full-time MBA alum from Cranfield. You will notice very quickly that the alumni at Cranfield form a very close community, and we also stay very close to Cranfield as well. We also have Kira Hamilton with us. Kira is part of the MBA team, and she's facilitating this webinar. So any technical questions, please send them to Kira. So a lot of this session is going to be taken up by the Q&A section. This is a real opportunity for you to ask any questions you might have about Cranfield, about the MBA, and of course about the application process. So please send in your questions throughout the webinar. There's a chat box at the bottom of the screen. Please send your questions in from there. Please also say hello so that we know you're there. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. Just to let you know, we are recording today's session. We've also put you all on mute. This is to stop the background noise so that everyone can hear the speakers. The mute button is on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. So if you want to ask a question in the Q&A session, you can come off mute then. We really want to know who is here with us today. So on your image, there are 3 dots. If you click on that, it brings down a drop-down menu with rename. Please make sure you've got your first name and your surname so that we know that you're with us. And we aim to finish by 1 o'clock today. So before I hand over, I just wanted to introduce our early application bursary. This is a £2,000 bursary if you apply before round 2. So our first deadline, round 1, is fast approaching, Sunday, 25th of October. And round 2, the deadline is the 24th of January. So you have a bit more time for January, but we really encourage you to apply early. Okay, so I am very excited to hand over to Helen, who's going to talk us through the Cranfield Full-Time MBA application process.
Thanks, Jules. If I can have my slide, please, Kira. Lovely, thank you. So welcome everybody, good to see you all. I'm just going to run through what the application process is for the full-time MBA. Some of you may already have logged on and had a look at the system, but if not, the first step is to click the Apply Now button on our website, which will take you through to our application portal. So what you'll do is create an account and then you can start your application, and you can save it and revisit it several times before you finally ready to submit it. In fact, we do recommend that you do that so that you have a chance to review it before finally submitting. So you'll be asked for obviously personal details, your education and your career history as well. And then there are 4 essay questions for you to complete. First one is around post-study objectives. So what are you looking to achieve after your MBA, and how do you think the MBA will help you achieve that? We're looking at areas of responsibility as well, and this is to find out about your leadership skills. What did you learn about yourself with this role? And also, what did you learn about other people, your leadership style? We ask about a significant achievement or event. And again, we're asking about what you learned about yourself during that time. So what were the successes, what went well with that particular occasion, and also what could you have learned from it? What could you perhaps have done differently? So it's all a bit about reflection on that one. We also ask you an ethical dilemma, and this is just to see how you react when your conscience was challenged. So think about a time when you really had to question yourself about the actions that you were going to take over something. There's also a section about hobbies. We want to know about you, what you do outside of work as well. What do you do to relax and your downtime? And then there's a section about anything else. What will your contribution be to Cranfield and to the 2021 cohort? We want to give you the opportunity to tell us anything that you haven't already mentioned during your application. Also, you'll be asked to upload some supporting documentation as part of the application process. Now, what we need for that is a copy of your degree certificate and transcripts as well. Degree certificate, more importantly, if you've got your transcripts as well, then that's great to upload those as well. We would like one reference, and that can be either an academic reference if it's within the last 5 years, or preferably a business reference from either your current employer or from a recent one. Your GMAT or GRE score report if you've taken it, and also English language test score if appropriate and you've taken it before your application. But you don't need those two, GMAT and English, if you haven't taken them yet. That won't hold up your application, so we would recommend submitting your application before you've actually taken those. Top tips really for submitting your application: don't leave any sections blank. That's a key really. And if possible, please don't put "please see attached" and then put a personal statement on there. We really want to see that you've given your application some thought and tailored it to Cranfield really. So once you're ready, you can submit your application form and it will be reviewed by our admissions board. And then we will select the candidates that we will invite for interview. What will happen is that you will get an email saying that you can book your interview online, and then you'll get a link through to the application portal again to book a convenient time and date for your interview. So your interview will take place online with a member of the admissions team or a member of faculty. And then the admissions board will review application, admissions, interview report as well. And then, all being well, we'll move to the offer stage. And then you'll have a month to accept your offer on the portal as well. And obviously we're here to support you during that time. If you have any questions at all, then you can certainly come back to us during that time. I hope that covers the application process. Jules?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Helen. I think that's given us real insight into the application process. And I really reiterate what Helen said. We really want to know about you, so please bring that through in the process. So we are going to start the question and answer session now. Please keep sending in your questions. Just so that you're aware, on the top, once we stop the presentation, on the top right hand side, there's a button so you can change the view of how you see the webinar. We have some questions that were sent in ahead of the webinar, so thank you for those of you that sent your questions on early. So we'll go through those first. So Helen, a question to you. How can I make my application stand out?
Yeah, I think, as you said, it's about doing your research on Cranfield and how you align to our programme. So we really like to see applicants who've gone through our website, looked at our modules, looked at our faculty, and if they draw out particular areas around that and highlight how they feel that will really benefit their studies, that's always a great bonus on the application form. As I said, don't leave any sections blank, and try Try not to go into too much detail. I think that's another key. You know, we've got a word limit on our application form, but you don't have to go up to that limit. Obviously, we want you to be able to give your account of yourself and your experience, but you don't have to go into masses of detail, because that's what the interview's for, really, that you can start to talk about that during your interview. Another key area, and this might sound a little bit obvious, but you'd be surprised how many applications we do get through from candidates who use similar essays for other business schools and then don't change the school name to Cranfield. Obviously, that's a little bit of a black mark in the box, but no, if you can just make sure, we appreciate that you might have several applications on the go and you're using very similar essays for each application, but just make sure that you've got the right business school in there.
Brilliant. Yes, that's definitely a no-no if you put in the wrong business school. Kira, could we actually just go on to the next slide? And I'm just going to highlight, so these are the application deadlines. So obviously, as I've said, we've got round 1 coming up very shortly on the 25th of October, round 2, the 24th of January. Both of those are applicable for the early application bursary of £2,000. We then have the application deadline for the 25th of April, and this is the final round for international students. And then we have the final deadline on the 13th of June for British and European students. So keep an eye out on the deadlines, but as we said, we really encourage you to apply early to make the best use of the early application bursary. Right, we have a question here from Daniel, regarding the reference letters. Helen, perhaps I can pass over to you. Are there any specific criteria that Cranfield would like to be addressed in the reference letters?
Okay. So as part of the application process, there is the opportunity to download one of our reference forms that you can then send on to your referees, or they can provide an official letter on headed paper commenting on how long you've worked at the organisation, what your relationship is within the organisation, and then a little comment around what your skills are and how you've sort of interacted at the company, that kind of thing, really, with your references. And it should then be emailed to Cranfield from their official business email address rather than a Gmail or Yahoo account.
Brilliant, thanks, Helen. Perfect. So we've had a question about if the courses will be done virtually or on site for 2021. So I'm going to pass that over to Sarah.
Hi everybody, haven't said hello yet. Lovely to see you all. Before I answer the question, I just want to say how excited I am for all of you. Genuinely, you're about to go on the most amazing journey. You know, whenever you decide to do your MBA and wherever you decide, it is a life-changing journey. So, you know, I'm really excited for you, and we're here to help you and answer any questions that we can. A really good question about how are we doing the MBA at the moment during the pandemic. It's been a difficult year, as you can imagine, with adapting, but we very quickly adapted. We went online straight away so that our students didn't miss any of their MBA, and we are on track with graduating with our current cohort as planned. For the year that you guys are looking at, which will be September 21, everything will be face-to-face on campus at Cranfield. Cranfield is in Bedfordshire. It's a lovely campus. We have lovely accommodation. At the moment, people are quarantining safely on site, and all of our lecture rooms are being cleaned per the requirements, and students are distanced per the requirements. So should we still have, you know, the challenges that we have at the moment, we are ready, we're equipped. We feel it's important to be able to give you the MBA experience, so we're doing everything that we can to do that.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Sarah. We've had a few questions about work experience needed before doing the MBA, whether or not you can go straight into doing the MBA as a fresh graduate or how much experience you need. Just before I pass over to Helen, if you'd like to discuss your specific situation, then please do send us an email at mbainquiries@cranfield.ac.uk, and we can discuss your specific kind of background and experience and what we recommend for you as well. But I'll pass over to Helen now.
Thanks. Yeah. So candidates are required to have a minimum of 3 years postgraduate work experience. On average, as students have around 8 years experience. Our average age is 32 for our students, and so they bring a lot of experience to the classroom. And that's one of the key benefits of our programme, really, that we do have that amount of experience, and it's very much a peer-to-peer learning experience as well. Faculty, it's very different from undergrad in that you're not sitting there just listening to faculty at the front of the classroom. It is very much an interactive experience as well. So you're very much learning from each other's experience, which is great when we have that much experience in the room.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with Helen more. It really is that experiential, interactive environment, and the 75% of the faculty come from industry, and almost all of the faculty still consult with businesses. So, you know, what that means for you as a student is they're bringing in real life business cases, real business problems, and encouraging you to share your experience so that you learn from the cohort as well as from the faculty. So we've had a question about interviews. What makes a great interview? I'm going to hand that to Sarah.
That's a really good question. We get that all the time. So I think the first thing I would say is our MBA is very competitive. So you really do need to stand out on your application and the interviews to give you the very best shot of getting onto the Cranfield MBA. One of the reasons why our MBA is very competitive is because we keep the cohort at a fairly small size. So we have an optimal number of students that we want in the classroom to give you an optimal learning experience, and therefore we don't have, you know, copious amounts of places. So when we are going through the application and the interview process, we're really looking for a few things. And the first thing that we're really looking for is really understanding who you are as an individual and what your dreams and hopes are post MBA. You know, why do you want to do an MBA? Why Cranfield? And what is it going to bring for you? Not just professionally, but also personally. As I said, it's such a personally transformative experience. We really want to understand your motivation behind why you want to do an MBA. And then we really love to hear about your experience, you know, what you've done in the past, what you've learned in the past, what you think you're particularly good at. And then we also love to understand where we think you could develop and grow, and some of the areas where an MBA and your MBA cohort classmates would be able to help you in this sense. So what we're really looking for when we're in admissions board is who you are as an individual. You might feel that you need to say certain things or answer certain questions to get into business school, but Cranfield is so special and different in that we're really looking for individuals with the flair. Whether you've got, you know, a corporate background or you've got dreams of becoming an entrepreneur, we don't mind. It's who you are and how you're going to excel and achieve in the future, and that's what we're looking for. We're quite unique as a business school, and we do try and get to know you throughout the process. So, you know, following this this webinar today, you might want to start making contact with Helen and, you know, start to ask her questions and get to know her, so that when we get to admissions board, we'll have your interview notes, we'll have your application, but hopefully we've also gotten to know you. I mean, we can already see a number of you, Daniel, Boa, we can see you already, so we're starting that journey with you. But in essence, to summarise, it's you. Who are you, and where do you want to go, and what are your dreams and aspirations, and how are we going to help you get there?
Fantastic, thanks, Sarah. And absolutely, as Sarah says, it's such a personalised MBA, and you really get to know you even at this early stage. Dan and I have already spoken, so it's great to see Dan on the webinar. But it is that very personalised MBA throughout, and I think that's also why the alumni are so closely knit, because you really form those strong bonds, not only with your cohort, but with the wider alumni community as well. And those sort of bonds stay for life. Right, so we've had a question about the GMAT and if it's compulsory for application. Perhaps Helen, you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So no, GMAT isn't compulsory to submit your application form. You can submit it afterwards. On the application form, on that section, if you have a date booked to take GMAT, then you can add that on there so that we know when to expect your score. As an alternative to GMAT, we also accept GRE. We look for a score in the 80th percentile, which equates to an individual score of 160 or above in each element. We also have our own admissions tests as well as an alternative to GMAT, which can be taken in country. And we would explain a little bit more about that post-application.
Fantastic, thanks Helen. So I've had a question about the interview cycles. So absolutely, we have, so for the next deadline, the 25th of October, you would then find out if you've got through to the interview round at the very end of October. You'd then be, if you were successful at that stage, you'd get invited to book your interview slot. We have specific interview periods. So for round one, you would be invited to interview between the 9th of November and the 27th of November. Following your interview from there, as Helen's mentioned, your interview notes and application would all go through to the admissions board, and you would find out from the week of the 14th of December, and that's then for the next round. For the 24th of January, you would then interview in February, and sort of the process is repeated. We've had a question about the scholarships. So one thing I would say with the scholarships is we are updating the website with our new scholarships, so please do keep an eye out on the website. We will have, for the different application rounds, there will be different deadlines for the scholarships, which are linked to the application round, so keep an eye on those as well. For round one, all of the scholarships will be open, so again, we encourage you to apply early. Fantastic. So I'm just looking for questions. Please do keep sending in any questions you have. It doesn't have to be necessarily about the application process, but can also be about the MBA or about Cranfield generally. Helen, I'm going to pass over a question to you. When can people start their application?
They can start it straight away. Yeah. So yeah, there's the link on the apply now link on the website, which will take you through to the application portal. So we do recommend that you start your application early. I think, as Jules said, the first application round closes on the 25th of October, and so an early application is beneficial, especially if you're looking to apply for a scholarship, because, as Jules said, they're all open at this early stage as well. Beneficial to be applying this early. I think you're getting ahead of the game, so to be able to get an offer at this stage will put you in a good position when you come to apply for on-campus accommodation, apply for funding, those kind of things as well. So that's why we really encourage an early application. And also we can start engaging with you quite early from this stage. We do many webinars so that you get to know each other as a cohort, and you can start bonding before you actually arrive on campus in September of next year. So the earlier you apply, the earlier we can start doing that as well.
Absolutely. Sarah, what advice would you give to prospective students at the start of their application process?
Good question. So I think it would be in how I approached the application process, and it's that I would give it the time that it needs. So the way that I approached it when I applied 6 years ago now is I went through the process before I was going to start the process. So I noted down all of the essay questions and I worked on them just in a Word document on my laptop for a couple of weeks before I started the application process. So I'd probably say to give yourself maybe 4 or 5 hours to think about your essay questions. And then when you've got them nailed, then go into the application itself and give yourself a couple of hours on the application. But I think it's my main advice is treat it with the time that it needs. I mean, this is our first impression of you as an individual, so give it the time that it needs and truly understand what it is, answer the questions properly, and use this as your opportunity to really shine, and tell us why Cranfield is so important to you.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Absolutely. And I think, you know, with your, as Sarah says, the application form is our first impression of you. You know, when the interviewer comes to interview you, they're going to read through your application form. And when your application goes to the admissions board, again, the admission board members will read your application form. So all of it forms part of your application that we keep referring back to. So really do give it the time and the thought that it needs, and really bring to life, you know, your personal experiences and your personality as well. So we've had
Jules, can I just add, you've just made me think of adding one more thing. It's about the scholarships point. I would encourage you to go, I've actually put the link into the chat, to look at what our scholarships are that we have on offer. And as Jules said, this is often refreshed, so please do keep looking at this page and give it some thought as to which scholarship you might like to go for, because there are scholarships out there and they're hugely beneficial for you. So you're more likely, I think, to get a scholarship if you have a clear rationale as to which you want and why you want it. So just using anecdotally my experience, I was very passionate about women in leadership, and I'd done quite a lot of women in leadership work before I came to Cranfield. So in my application, I wrote a case for why I would like to be considered for the Women in Leadership Scholarship, and then I got it. And I think part of this was because I was really passionate about that one area and that one scholarship. So for those of you who are hoping to secure a scholarship, really look at the one that you want and give that some time as well.
Definitely. Thanks, Sarah. So we've had a question about a cutoff score for the GRE and GMAT tests. So I'm going to pass that over to you, Helen.
Yeah, sure. So GMAT score, we look for a minimum score of 600 overall, and we like that to be balanced in the quant and the verbal sections as well. So 600 as a minimum. And GRE, we look for scoring the 80th percentile, which equates to 160 in the two elements.
Great, thanks, Helen. So we've also had a question about, are there any placements or internships for students while they're on the programme? So we do work closely with businesses, and there are several opportunities throughout the year to work on projects with different businesses. So for example, when I did the operations module in term 1, as a learning team group, we went out and we found a business to work with on a project with their operations side. So for my team, we chose a microbrewery. Another team chose Luton Airport. There are all different types of businesses that you can work with. You also work with a business within your learning team on your DMDA, which is decision making data analytics module, and Cranfield actually has a range of different projects with different companies, and you as a learning team choose which company you want to work with which project you want to do, and you'll work closely with the company representative on a specific project, and then you meet with the leadership team. You will present your ideas back to the team at the company on that specific project. The other opportunity is, as one of your electives, you can choose to work with the business as a project instead. So obviously if you reach out to a company, research the company, find the right company, from their point of view, it's a MBA student from one of the top business schools, and that's worked really well for a lot of students as well. One thing to highlight here is we do have a webinar coming up with the careers team, and that is on the 10th of December, where we'll be talking with the careers team to show how they'll support you and help you to find your dream job. And part of that is obviously looking at the projects that you're working with businesses, as well as networking with alumni and sort of the specific workshops and events that are set up for that. Okay, so we have another question that's just come up, which I'm going to throw over to you, Helen, about the reference letters. Would it be better to have a reference from someone's manager or from a colleague who graduated from Cranfield? Well, we always rate people who graduated from Cranfield.
Definitely, yes. My response to that would be to have both, really. So we don't necessarily need an academic reference, especially if it's been a little while since you've been out of education. So we're quite happy to accept 2 business references. Certainly the reference from a Cranfield alum holds a lot of weight with us, because they understand Cranfield and they understand what we're looking for in candidates. So yes, that's a really good one to be able to submit. And then also one from your current line manager. We do appreciate that sometimes it's not always possible to approach your manager at the application stage, because obviously you don't want to perhaps let them know at this stage that this is what you're thinking. So you can approach a former line manager, a colleague or a former colleague from a different company for your first reference that we would like to have by the interview stage. And then once you're made an offer on the programme, then you can approach your second referee to provide that second reference. That's fine.
Fantastic, thanks for that, Helen. Sarah, I'm going to send one over to you. What were your highlights when you did the Cranfield MBA?
It genuinely is such a hard question. There are so many, so let me try and pick some out. So just before I decided to start my MBA, I was working in the city, so I was working in investments and asset management as a marketing director for Zurich, who is a big insurance company, and pretty much I was on this trajectory. I was on one of those, those shortlist groups that was going to be a CEO within 5 years, that kind of stuff. And so in some ways you might say, well, why did you do an MBA? Well, it's because I could just see what my future was. I could see exactly where I was going, and I wanted to see what else was out there. And having always worked in investments, I hadn't experienced other industries, I hadn't really experienced other roles and things like that. And I quite wanted to challenge myself. And we always sort of ask ourselves at admissions board, actually, what is it that brings MBAs together? There's something about an MBA candidate that makes them a bit different. And I think it's that they don't take the easy route, and they always try and challenge themselves. And by challenging themselves, they potentially open up far more opportunity. So that's why I went on to the MBA. And the reason why I chose Cranfield for my MBA was I've got 2 mentors, 2 MDs in the city. And one of them said the biggest regret of their career was that they'd never studied their MBA at Cranfield. And to be honest, that was enough for me to be absolutely sold to the place. I then went to see the place and fell in love. So it's quite interesting that after my MBA, I went back to the city, one of the things that I said I was never going to do, and became an MD of a consultancy. And within about 3 years, I'd left, and I'm now working at Cranfield. So that tells you something, I think, about the life-changing place that Cranfield is. The things that really shone out for me are the academic stuff is amazing. We've got amazing professors, and it's as you would expect for an MBA. So that's why we don't always spend loads of time talking about it, because you can read all about it and it's wonderful and it's everything that you would want to learn on an MBA. It's the other stuff that we're really proud of. It's the alumni community. It's the fact that one evening Nick Jenkins, who is on Dragon's Den, which is a hugely famous show in the UK for business, Nick Jenkins just came in one evening and gave us a lecture on his journey of how he started Moonpig and his journey in Russia, and it was the access to him. It was the access to Sarah Willingham, another dragon from Dragon's Den. Her husband came in and offered me a job for this company, that a completely different industry. It was the fact that I could learn from people who had more experience than me in my cohort, and also still learn from people who were lesser on the experience side. So I could learn how to be a good manager, and I could learn to be better managed. And the really important thing I think that I took out personally, for me, it was a really personally transformative experience. The confidence that I grew in that year was just amazing. And it was the psychometric testing that we do on the MBA. We invest an incredible amount in psychometric testing, and by that I mean an understanding of you. So we ask other people, we ask you, we do perception testing, etc. Some of this stuff you've probably done before, but have you ever really spent a year to truly understand it and truly understand how you're perceived, who you are, tested your limits within a very safe environment, and had world-leading organizational behavioral professors help you to analyze that information as well? So you spend this year just shaping yourself and saying, I really want to be better here, or I want to be better here, or actually I love how I am and I just want to become more confident. It's that kind of stuff, which is the stuff that comes on top of the academic stuff. All the academic stuff will take you, hours and evenings and weekends, but it's this other stuff on top that you just build as a part of an MBA, which I've never seen anywhere else, and that for me is the highlight.
I couldn't agree more, actually, Sarah. That it's quite funny when you speak to different alumni, one of the words that consistently comes up about the Cranfield MBA is this transformative experience, and absolutely the confidence to go out and do things that you might not have had the confidence to do before the MBA. And I'd just like to add to exactly what Sarah said about you might have done some of the psychometric tests before, but not the kind of all the extra. And I actually did one of the tests you do is the Myers-Briggs. The Myers-Briggs, I think it's test indicator. And I sat down before joining Cranfield, I sat down with a practitioner one-on-one for an hour to go through my results. And I thought, yeah, I've got a pretty good handle on that. I really understand that. I then obviously went on and did the Cranfield MBA, and Richard Kay, who's one of the lecturers for organisational behaviour, he's absolutely phenomenal. So my level of understanding ended up to be about here, and then after the MBA, just up here, it's just on a whole different level. And you really use that throughout the MBA in your learning team groups, and then obviously after the MBA as well. And I think one thing to add that happens during the MBA as well is that you work with executive coach throughout your year. So you have several different sessions, and it's one-to-one, it's very confidential, and it's, the executive coaches on a day-to-day basis work with CEOs, work with managing directors, and you can really use that opportunity and that time to kind of work on a specific area or to develop a specific skill set. And for me, that was so tremendously helpful in my personal journey and in gaining that confidence that Sarah talked about. And I think there's one other thing that I'd really like to touch on as well is, well, two things. I can talk about Cranfield for hours. I think one of them is as Sarah said, with all of the stuff that you're doing on the academic side, it's really setting you up as a future leader. And that's why they have the executive coaching. That's why there's the media training simulation, which you do with Stephen Carver, another amazing lecturer, where you basically, in your learning team group, you get given a crisis, You have to decide who's going to be the CEO, who's the media advisor, your different roles. You have about half an hour, 40 minutes before you're put in front of a whole range of massive TV cameras and real life journalists for you to give a press conference and for the journalists to ask you lots of questions. And it is amazing how they can skew what you've said. And that's recorded, so you can then watch back. Which is hilarious on how some people deal under the pressure, but is also a really great learning tool. And you do that twice, so that in the second time you do it, you can see the marked improvement from how the team did in the first one to how the team did in the second one. And that's because, you know, with the Cranfield MBA, we're looking for future leaders. The MBA is to help you on that journey to be that leader in that senior leadership team, to be the CEO. And so often, using the media training as an example, if a company goes through a crisis, you see the CEO on the camera and they completely make the crisis so much worse. And obviously it's not just the media training, but you go through the whole crisis management, you go through the whole process, and everything on the Cranfield MBA is geared up towards you becoming that senior leader.
The other thing I'd just add is that it's very much about developing you and personal transformation, but through that process you learn a lot about other people. So for example, when you do the Belbin psychometric testing, which tells you about the 7 key characteristics which you need in a team, shaper, finishers, people like that, you obviously understand who you are in that team, but you understand what you need in your team. So as a future leader, whether you're going to go down a corporate route or you're going to start to grow your own business, it helps you to understand, A, what do I need around me? Who am I and what do I need around me for success? And B, how do I motivate that kind of team? And that's critical as well as a leader, because as we all know, you know, leaders are only as successful as those people around them. So the transformative part is also about you and how you work with others, which comes as a byproduct of all of this personal stuff that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Thanks for adding that, Sarah. We've had a question about the tuition deposit to accept an offer. Helen, perhaps if you could talk through once the candidate has received the offer, what are the next steps?
Yeah, sure. So once you receive an offer for the programme, you will have a month to decide to accept your place. And once you've accepted your place, you will then have a further month to pay your deposit. We ask for a deposit of £3,000 to secure your place. We don't offer a payment plan once on programme, but we do ask that the tuition fees are paid by registration in September. What we do offer, though, are a couple of loan options for you to finance your studies, and they're on the scholarship page and funding page that Sarah put up earlier. So we work with Prodigy Finance, which work with a number of schools offering MBA programs, and also one called Future Finance. So the details are there. The links to their platforms are via our scholarship and funding page. And they will disperse the funds directly to us at Cranfield once you've started on the programme.
Brilliant. Thanks, Helen, for that. Fantastic. Well, I wanted to say thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Sorry, excuse the noises in the background, my puppy. I'd like to let you know that we've been so good throughout. I'd like to let you know that we have a webinar coming up, the one that I mentioned earlier, for when we'll be talking with the careers team. That's on the 10th of December, and you can sign up on our MBA events page. We'll have the careers team on. They'll talk you through the different workshops that you run, the support that they help you with, and all the different events that happen as well. Please look out for updates on our LinkedIn page. So we've got a Cranfield School of Management LinkedIn page where we post lots of updates, not only about the events that we're running, but also what the current MBA students are getting up to. So the next application deadline is the 25th of October. The one after that is the 24th of January. Both of those are eligible for the early application bursary of £2,000. If you have any questions following this webinar, please email us at mbainquiries@cranfield.ac.uk. We will get back to you. And we look forward to speaking with you again. Thanks everyone so much for joining us today.